We must speak now.
Yes, the time has come.
This 1867 portrait of two sisters appears innocent until historians uncovered its secret. The attic smelled of dust and forgotten time. Sarah Mitchell, a documentary researcher from New Orleans, carefully lifted the corner of a moth-eaten blanket, covering a stack of wooden crates. She was working on a project about post-Civil War Louisiana families, and this abandoned plantation house outside Baton Rouge had been donated to the Historical Society 3 months earlier. Her flashlight caught something white wedged between two leather-bound journals. She pulled gently, revealing a photograph in a tarnished silver frame. Two girls, perhaps 12 and 14 years old, sat side by side in an elegant studio setting. They wore identical white dresses with lace collars, their hair styled in the same elaborate braids. Their faces were solemn, as was customary for photographs of that era. Sarah studied the image more closely. The girls looked remarkably similar, same nose, same jawline, same intense gaze directed at the camera. Sisters, clearly. The photograph was dated on the back in faded ink, April 1867. Beaumont Studio, New Orleans. She photographed the image with her phone and sent it to her colleague, Marcus, a genealogist who specialized in Louisiana families. Within an hour, he called back. "Do you know whose house this was?" he asked, his voice tight with excitement. "The Beaumont estate," Sarah replied. Thomas Beaumont owned it before the war. Made his fortune in cotton and sugar. "I found records," Marcus said. Thomas Beaumont died in 1866, shortly after the war ended. He had one legitimate daughter, Catherine. But Sarah, I also found something else. There's a freed slave registry from 1865. A woman named Eliza was listed as freed from the Beaumont plantation, along with a daughter named Marie, born in 1853. Sarah looked at the photograph again. Catherine and Marie, two sisters, born of the same father but different mothers. One free, one enslaved until the end of the war. This photograph was taken in 1867, Sarah said slowly. 2 years after emancipation. Why would they be photographed together like this? Dressed identically, posed as equals? "That's what we need to find out," Marcus replied. "Because in 1867 Louisiana, this shouldn't exist. Not like this. Not so openly." Sarah carefully removed the photograph from its frame. On the back, beneath the date, were words she hadn't noticed before. Written in a different hand, shakier and more desperate. "Forgive us for what comes next." Her hands trembled as she read those words again. Sarah spent the next 3 days immersed in parish records, cemetery logs, and archived newspapers from 1860s Louisiana. Marcus joined her at the Historical Society's research library, surrounded by leather volumes and microfilm readers that hummed in the silence. Thomas Beaumont was a complicated man, Marcus said, spreading documents across the table. He inherited the plantation from his father in 1840. Married a woman named Virginia from a prominent New Orleans family in 1842. Their daughter Catherine was born in 1851. Sarah pulled up a census record on her laptop. And Marie was born in 1853 to Eliza, who was listed as property of the Beaumont household. The words tasted bitter even as she said them. Property. A human being reduced to an entry in a ledger. Marcus leaned back in his chair. What's unusual is what happened after Thomas died. Most plantation owners' wills from this period are straightforward property divided among white heirs, former slaves ignored or given token amounts. But Thomas's will was sealed by the court. I requested access, but it's going to take weeks. What about Virginia, his wife? Sarah asked. What happened to her? That's where it gets interesting. Marcus slid a newspaper clipping across the table. It was from the New Orleans Daily Picayune. Dated June 1867, the headline read, "Widow Beaumont withdraws from society." The brief article mentioned that Virginia Beaumont had ceased attending social functions and had closed the plantation house to visitors. Neighbors speculated about illness or grief, but no official explanation was given. 2 months after that photograph was taken, Sarah murmured. She pulled out the photograph again, studying the girls' faces under the library's harsh fluorescent lights. Catherine, the older girl, sat with perfect posture, her hands folded in her lap. Marie, younger by 2 years, mirrored her position exactly. But something in Marie's eyes looked different, not defiant, but watchful, as if she expected the world to snatch this moment away from her at any second. "There's something else," Marcus said quietly. "I found Eliza's death record. She died in April 1867, the same month this photograph was taken." Sarah's breath caught. How did she die? It doesn't say. Just lists the date and natural causes. But Sarah, she was only 32 years old. Sarah stood outside what remained of the Beaumont studio, building on Royal Street in the French Quarter. The ground floor was now a coffee shop, but the ornate ironwork balcony above still bore the faded letters, Beaumont Photographic Studio Est, 1855. She had spent the morning tracking down the building through property records. The studio had been operated by Thomas Beaumont's younger brother, Charles, a photographer who had made a name for himself capturing the faces of New Orleans' elite before and after the war. Inside, Sarah approached the owner, a woman named Diane who had purchased the building 15 years earlier. When Sarah explained her research, Diane's eyes lit up. The previous owner left boxes of old papers in the basement, Diane said. I kept meaning to donate them to the Historical Society, but never got around to it. Come on. The basement was cool and dark, lined with metal shelves holding supplies for the coffee shop. In the far corner, covered with a plastic tarp, sat 3 large wooden boxes. Sarah's hands shook as she opened the first one. Inside were glass plate negatives, carefully wrapped in cloth, along with ledger books listing clients and sessions. She found the ledger from 1867 and flipped through the pages. April 14th, 1867, Beaumont, Virginia portrait, 2 subjects, full studio setup. Payment, $25. $25 was an enormous sum for a photograph in 1867, equivalent to several months' wages for most workers. This wasn't a casual portrait. This was something carefully planned and expensive. Sarah pulled out her phone and called Marcus. I found the studio records. Virginia Beaumont commissioned the photograph herself. She paid a fortune for it. So she wanted this photograph taken? Marcus said slowly. After her husband died, after Eliza died, she brought both girls to the studio and had them photographed as equals. But why? Sarah asked. And what happened afterward that made her withdraw from society completely? Diane, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. There's something written on the inside cover of that ledger. I noticed it years ago but never understood it. Sarah turned to the front of the book. In faded pencil, someone had written, "Some debts cannot be paid with money. Some truths cannot be buried." Beneath it was a signature, Charles Beaumont, photographer. Back at the plantation house, Sarah returned to the attic with renewed focus. If Virginia Beaumont had commissioned the photograph intentionally, there had to be more evidence of her reasoning. She began opening every crate, every trunk, every sealed box that remained. In a small leather case hidden beneath a stack of tablecloths, she found them letters, dozens of them, tied together with a blue ribbon. The paper was yellowed and brittle, but the ink remained legible. The first letter was dated March 1867, 1 month before the photograph. It was written in elegant flowing script. My dearest Catherine, you are old enough now to understand the truth, though it pains me to write these words. Your father was not a perfect man. He made choices that I cannot defend, but I can try to set right. Marie is your sister in every way that matters in blood, in circumstance, in the loss you both have suffered. When I am gone, you must remember what I am about to do. You must remember that I chose love over propriety, truth over comfort. Your mother, Virginia. Sarah sat down heavily on an old trunk, her heart pounding. This wasn't just a photograph. This was a declaration. She read through more letters, some from Virginia to Catherine, others from Virginia to people she called friends, though their responses suggested otherwise. Each letter spoke of Virginia's determination to raise both girls together, to give Marie the education and opportunities that Catherine would receive, to acknowledge publicly what society demanded she hide. One letter, dated March 28, 1867, was particularly painful to read. It was from someone named Margaret, apparently a childhood friend of Virginia's. You have lost your senses. I say this out of love, Virginia. That girl is not your daughter. She is the child of sin, the product of your husband's weakness. To claim her as Catherine's equal will destroy your reputation, Catherine's future, and any hope of maintaining your position in society. Send her away. Give her money if you must, but do not do this thing you are planning. I beg you. Virginia's response was paper-clipped to the letter. It was brief. Dear Margaret, my husband's weakness does not diminish Marie's humanity. My reputation means nothing if I cannot sleep at night. I have made my decision. Please do not write again. Virginia. Sarah carefully photographed each letter, her hands trembling. This woman had known exactly what she was doing. She had known the cost and chosen to pay it anyway. Marcus arrived at the plantation house the next morning with a thick folder of documents, His face was drawn and he looked like he hadn't slept. "I got access to Thomas Beaumont's will," he said, spreading papers across the dining room table. "Sarah, it changes everything." The will was written in formal legal language, but its contents were extraordinary. Thomas Beaumont had divided his estate into 3 equal parts, 1/3 to his wife Virginia, 1/3 to his daughter Catherine, and 1/3 to Marie, whom he explicitly identified as his daughter by Eliza. "He acknowledged her," Sarah whispered. "Legally." "In writing. There's more," Marcus said. "He wrote a letter to be opened after his death. It was sealed with the will. Listen to this. I have lived as a coward, unable to claim publicly what I know in my heart to be true. Marie is my daughter as surely as Catherine is. Eliza was not my property, but the woman I loved, though the law forbade me from honoring that love openly. I beg Virginia's forgiveness for the pain I have caused, and I beg my daughter's forgiveness for the world I am leaving them to navigate. May Virginia have the strength I lack to do what is right." Sarah felt tears sting her eyes. "So Virginia read this after he died, and she decided to honor it," Marcus said, "despite everything it would cost her. She brought both girls into her home, dressed them as equals, had them photographed together as sisters. She was making a statement to society, to her family, to history. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of Virginia's choice settling over them. But what happened to them?" Sarah finally asked. "We know Virginia withdrew from society, but what about the girls? What happened to Catherine and Marie?" Marcus pulled out another document. "That's what I spent all night trying to find out. And Sarah, I think I found something. There's a property deed from 1869, 2 years after the photograph. A house in the Garden District of New Orleans, purchased jointly by Catherine and Marie. No last names listed, just first names. They stayed together," Sarah said. "It looks that way. But here's where it gets complicated." Marcus laid out a series of newspaper clippings. "I found mentions of them in society pages over the next few years, but they're always referred to obliquely the Beaumont sisters, the young ladies of Magazine Street. Never photographed again, never named directly. It's like society knew they existed but refused to acknowledge them clearly. Sarah knew they needed to understand. Eliza to understand the full story. The next day, she visited the New Orleans Public Library's genealogy section, searching through slave registries, plantation records, and Freedmen's Bureau documents. What she found was fragmentary but revealing. Eliza had been born in 1835 on a smaller plantation 50 miles north of New Orleans. She was sold to Thomas Beaumont in 1850 when she was 15 years old. Records showed she worked in the main house, initially as a kitchen assistant. A church registry from a Black Baptist congregation established after the war contained more information. Sarah found an entry for Eliza dated 1865, right after emancipation. The pastor had noted, "Eliza came to us in poor health but strong spirits. She speaks of her daughter Marie with great love and great fear. She says she has been promised the child will be cared for, but she does not trust promises from those who held her in bondage." Sarah found another entry from early 1867. "Eliza grows weaker. The doctor says her heart is failing. She has made me promise to watch over Marie, to ensure the girl knows her mother's love, to tell her that everything Eliza endured was to give Marie a chance at a different life." She speaks of Virginia Beaumont with complex feelings: anger for the years lost, gratitude for what is being offered now, and deep sadness that she will not live to see what Marie becomes. The final entry was dated April 10, 1867. "Eliza passed peacefully this morning. Her last words were, 'Tell Marie to be brave. Tell her she is loved. Tell her she is free.' Virginia Beaumont came to the church this afternoon. She wept beside the body. She told me she would honor every promise Thomas made to Eliza. She said Marie would know her mother's story." Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. 4 days after Eliza's death, Virginia had taken both girls to the photography studio. The photograph wasn't just a portrait, it was a promise kept, a vow made visible. Marcus called while she was still at the library. "I found Eliza's burial site," he said. "St. Louis Cemetery, No. 3. Sarah, you need to see this." An hour later, they stood before a simple but well-maintained grave marker. It read, "Eliza, beloved mother, 1835 to 1867. Beneath it, in smaller letters, "Her courage lives in those she loved." Fresh flowers lay at the base of the stone, though the grave was over 150 years old. "Someone still tends this grave," Sarah said quietly. To understand what Virginia and the girls faced, Sarah needed to know how society responded. She spent days reading through 1867 to 1870 newspapers, society columns, and private journals held in various Louisiana archives. The picture that emerged was damning. In May 1867, just 1 month after the photograph was taken, the New Orleans Ladies' Social Guild issued a statement declaring that Virginia Beaumont was no longer in good standing due to behavior inconsistent with proper Christian values and social decorum. Sarah found letters between prominent families discussing Virginia's scandal. One woman wrote to her sister, "She has brought that mulatto child into her home and claims her as Catherine's sister." Can you imagine? Poor Catherine will never find a suitable husband now. Virginia has destroyed that girl's future for the sake of misguided sentiment. Another letter, this one from a business associate of Thomas Beaumont, was more revealing. Virginia has made public what should have remained private. We all knew Thomas had the girl, but decent people have the courtesy to maintain appearances. Virginia's insistence on treating the child as legitimate is an insult to every proper family in Louisiana. But there were other voices too. Sarah found an editorial in a short-lived progressive newspaper published by former abolitionists. Mrs. Beaumont has shown more Christian charity and moral courage than the entire congregation of St. Charles Avenue's finest churches. She has looked upon an innocent child and seen not scandal but family, not shame but responsibility. History will judge her more kindly than her contemporaries do. Marcus discovered court records showing that several of Virginia's relatives attempted to have her declared mentally incompetent in order to take control of Catherine and the estate. The case was dismissed in August 1867 when Virginia appeared in court with 2 prominent doctors who testified to her complete soundness of mind. The judge's written decision included a remarkable statement. While this court cannot condone Mrs. Beaumont's social choices, we find no evidence of mental deficiency. A woman's decision to honor her husband's wishes and provide for all his children, however unconventional, does not constitute grounds for declaring her incompetent. She fought for them, Sarah said, reading the decision. Every step of the way she fought. And she paid for it, Marcus replied, pointing to a property record. Look at this. By 1869, she'd sold the plantation and most of Thomas's business holdings. She was being economically strangled. People refused to do business with her. Banks wouldn't extend credit. She liquidated everything to maintain independence. Sarah returned to the plantation attic, convinced there must be more personal documents. In a small trunk she'd previously overlooked, she found a journal belonging to Catherine. The entries began in 1868, when Catherine was 17. January 4th, 1868. Marie and I walked in the garden today. People stared at us from the street, but we held our heads high as Mother taught us. Marie asked me if I resent her for what we've lost. I told her the truth. I only resent the people who cannot see what Mother sees, what Father finally understood. Marie is my sister. That is not a burden. It is a gift. March 12th, 1868. A woman approached Mother at the market and spat at her. Marie tried to step between them, but Mother pulled us both away. That evening, Mother gathered us in her room. She said, "You will face worse than this. People will try to convince you that your bond is shameful, that you should separate for the sake of propriety. Do not listen to them. You are sisters, and that truth is worth more than all their approval." July 20th, 1868. Marie's birthday. She is 15 now. We baked a cake together, just the 3 of us. Marie cried, saying she missed her mother. I held her and thought about how strange it is that we share a father, but grew up in such different worlds. She told me stories about Eliza tonight, how her mother sang to her, how she taught her to read in secret, how she always told Marie she was destined for more than servitude. I am honored to help fulfill Eliza's dreams for her daughter. Sarah found entries describing their daily life lessons with tutors who were willing to teach both girls, walks through the city where they faced hostility and occasional kindness, quiet evenings reading together. Catherine wrote about Marie's intelligence, her love of literature, her talent for drawing. One entry from late 1868 was particularly poignant. Marie asked me today what will happen when Mother dies. She worries that I will abandon her, that I will choose a conventional life and leave her behind. I took her hands and made her look at me. "You are my sister," I told her. "Not by choice or convenience, but by blood and by promise. Where I go, you go. If society will not accept us both, then society can watch us walk away together." She wept, and so did I. Marcus made a breakthrough in genealogical records that changed everything they thought they knew about the story's ending. He arrived at Sarah's office with a folder full of documents and a smile on his face. "I found them," he said. "I found out what happened to Catherine and Marie." He spread out property records, census data, and newspaper clippings. After Virginia died in 1873, the girls, now young women, left New Orleans. They moved to Philadelphia, where racial attitudes were somewhat less rigid. They changed their last name to Lawrence. Sarah leaned forward, eager for more. "Catherine became a teacher," Marcus continued. "She established a small private school for girls, both white and black students, which was radical, even in Philadelphia. And Marie became an artist. She had exhibitions, sold her work, was reviewed in newspapers." He pulled out a newspaper clipping from 1880, yellowed and fragile. It showed a sketch of a painting with a review beneath. Miss Marie Lawrence's latest work, Sisters, depicts two young women in white dresses, seated side by side. The intimacy and equality of their positioning challenges the viewer to confront their own prejudices. "It is a bold and moving piece." "The painting," Sarah whispered. She recreated the photograph as a painting. "And there's more," Marcus said. "They lived together their entire lives, neither married. When Catherine died in 1901, she left everything to Marie. When Marie died in 1909, her will established a scholarship fund for young black women pursuing education or the arts. The fund still exists. It's administered by a foundation in Philadelphia." Sarah felt overwhelmed by emotion. They kept their promise to each other, to Virginia, to Eliza. Marcus pulled out one final document, a newspaper obituary for Marie from 1909. It read, "Marie Lawrence, noted artist and philanthropist, passed away peacefully at her home on Wednesday. She is remembered by colleagues and students as a woman of remarkable dignity and talent." Miss Lawrence frequently spoke of her sister Catherine, with whom she shared her life and work. In an 1895 interview, she stated, "My sister and I were given a gift by two extraordinary women, my mother Eliza and my sister's mother Virginia. They gave us the chance to love each other openly, despite a world that told us we shouldn't exist in the same sphere. We built our lives on that foundation of love, and I have never regretted it for a single day." 6 months after finding the photograph, Sarah stood in the Louisiana Historical Society's main exhibition hall. Before her hung the portrait of Catherine and Marie, professionally restored and lit carefully to show every detail. Beside it were Virginia's letters, excerpts from Catherine's journal, documents about Eliza's life, and the story of what these women had built together. The exhibition was titled "The Portrait of Silence: How Three Women Defied the Post-War South." Sarah had worked with Marcus and a team of historians to piece together the complete narrative, not just of Virginia's courage, but of Eliza's sacrifice, Catherine's loyalty, and Marie's resilience. Visitors moved slowly through the exhibition, reading the documents, studying the photograph. Sarah watched a young black woman stop before the portrait, tears streaming down her face. After a long moment, the woman approached Sarah. "My grandmother told me stories about a relative who lived with a white woman in the 1800s, she said quietly. "Stories about a school in Philadelphia, about a woman who painted. I thought they were just family legends, but I think Marie might be my ancestor." Sarah's breath caught. "Would you be willing to take a DNA test? We could compare it with genetic samples from Catherine's descendants. We found some earlier this year. 2 months later, the results came back positive." Marie's great-great-great-granddaughter stood in the same exhibition hall, looking at the photograph with new eyes. "They survived," she said softly. "Despite everything, they survived and built something beautiful." Sarah nodded, thinking about the words on the back of the photograph. "Forgive us for what comes next." For years, she had wondered what Virginia meant. Now she understood. Virginia had known that the decision to acknowledge Marie would bring hardship to both girls. She had known they would face discrimination, lost opportunities, and social exile. She was asking forgiveness not for the choice itself, but for the burden it would place on the daughters she loved. But Catherine and Marie had transformed that burden into purpose. They had taken the love they were given and built a life that honored everyone who had sacrificed for them. The exhibition became one of the Historical Society's most visited, drawing researchers, descendants, and people who simply needed to see evidence that love and courage had once prevailed over prejudice. The photograph, once hidden in an attic, now stood as testament to the truth that family could be chosen, defended, and celebrated even when the world insisted otherwise. Sarah often returned to stand before the portrait, studying the faces of two girls who had refused to let society's limitations define them. In their solemn expressions, she saw not just resignation to difficulty, but quiet determination to honor those who had fought for them to sit side by side, dressed as equals, captured forever in silver and light.